Uh, Sammy, Dr. Eric Westman was on an interview with Judy Cho. He was saying that he doesn't mind poofer oil. Did he? Oh, God. Because he hasn't seen any science evidence. Okay. I've made my. Poofer is basically bad. This is the problem with a lot of I'll tell you why Eric Westman is saying this. He grew up in an era and got studied in an era when for keto diets, the original keto diet, it used seed oil. The original keto diet that was developed back in 1920 for epilepsy was basically like 10 to 15% protein and 85 to 90% fat. And the only way they could get so much fat into these children was with seed oil. But back then, the seed oil wasn't as refined and processed as it is today. So it didn't have the level of deuterium in it that it has today, which was one factor. And the second factor was basically it wasn't as damaged or oxidized compared to today. Today, it's way worse than what it was back then, what they were using back then. So as a consequence, that research is what he bases his opinion on. But since then, there's been plenty of research showing lipid peroxidation in LDL from these PUFA oils. And there's been plenty of research also in Eastern Europe and all that on deuterium showing high levels of deuterium in refined oils compared to natural animal fats. So one thing, he hasn't seen that research. The second thing he's got no idea about, like most academics in the West, of deuterium or quantum biology. They're completely ignorant about that part of the science. And so that is why they are viewing it from that reductionist, from that lens of ignorance, and they're stating these things. He sort of views it as, well, it doesn't raise insulin, it's low insulinogenic, but he's not considering the ramifications of damage to the mitochondria from the high deuterium levels or the high oxidation that can actually cause inflammation, and that inflammation can create arterial, damage, irrespective of high carbohydrates. So normal PUFA coming from like plants, like nuts and stuff like that, or animal stuff, that's not going to cause that problem because it's in a matrix within the food that's actually, it's not being processed, that actually is deranged it and damaged it and actually increased its. I'll give you an example. Certain PUFA in certain nuts is as low in deuterium as that in plants. Sorry, that in animals. Got it? So it's actually low deuterium. Some of the nuts have got low deuterium fat. But when that fat is processed, the seeds from those plants is processed and producing this massive amount, because of the industrial process, it adds deuterium to it. And it can raise it up to 255 parts per million, depending on the level of processing. That's the problem. And that is what he's ignorant about, that part of the research. Unfortunately, he hasn't looked into this sort of stuff. And that's why he has, a very old-fashioned, I'll call it a very old-fashioned understanding of the oil industry. Let's put it that way. Not a modern one. He needs to get himself up to date about industrial PUFA or industrial seed oils, to be more precise. But he's completely unaware. I mean, Nina Teicholz and many others have done research in the oil industry and how they've basically fabricated the research to hide a lot of this evidence. She's exposed a lot of that. Maybe Eric needs to get a bit out of the research lab and start looking at some of this information, and before he gives an opinion on PUFA from oils, would be my opinion. So he's completely wrong on a number of fronts, on oxidation, aldehydes, and because there's research showing very high aldehydes in these, and that rip lipid membranes that cause oxidation and inflammation. So I don't know what research he's talking about, but he's not looking at the right research, or he's still looking at old-fashioned research that never looked at that stuff. Again, he's basically another low-carb reductionist. Unfortunately, there's many of them. There are reductionists in the paleo community, reductionists in the low-carb community, and reductionists in the basically the low-fat community and the other sort of things, vegan and all that. And none of them understand the Randall cycle. Only Philip Randall just created the damn thing in 1963, and they still don't understand it. And these are not the average people. These are academically trained people, which have to have a certain level of IQ to be able to acquire that knowledge that they've got. I'm shocked that they still haven't understood the Randall cycle. Philip Randall would still be turning in his grave. He only published it back in 1963. Crazy. Yeah.